Amanda Hunter, thank you for joining us here at Bold today. You are the Research and Communications Director for the Barbara Lee Family Foundation. Tell me a little bit about what you guys do.
Sure. So here at the Barbara Lee Family Foundation, we're based in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And for the past 20 years, we've done bipartisan research on the obstacles and opportunities women face when they run for office. We've studied every gubernatorial race involving a woman since 1998, and we seek to spread our research as far and wide as we can to give women the tools to succeed when they run for office at any level.
So right now we see this hugely diverse field of Democratic candidates, many of whom are women. Some of them have actually been senators. Tell me what type of obstacles they face.
That's such a great question. And it's important to just note the historic nature of the Democratic field, having 6 women in the running for the presidency and the possibility of multiple women on the presidential debate stage is something that seems like it would be unheard of just a few years ago. And we know from our research that when women seek executive office, like mayor of their city, governor of their state, or in this case, commander in chief, they face additional obstacles because it's one thing for voters to support a woman to be a decision maker as part of a deliberative body like a legislature. But if she's going to effectively be the decision maker, CEO, and the buck stops there, voters need to be that much more convinced that she's up to the job. And what we've seen for years and years and what we've seen recently is that men can simply release their resume and it's accepted. Women have to prove over and over and justify that they're able to get results.
So Associated Press published an article over the weekend in which you were quoted saying women are worried about voting for female candidates because they're not sure they'll be able to beat Trump if they ultimately do get the party's nomination. Tell me a little bit about that, and what does it mean that women are afraid to vote for other women for this reason?
Well, it's important to note in any case that women are not a monolithic voting bloc. Women don't all vote the same way. And we know from our years of research that party and ideology really often outweigh any voter's decision at the ballot box. So it's a myth when people think that women all vote the same or that women would vote for other women just because they're women. We know that's not true. There are a lot of factors that interact at the ballot box for voting decisions. And the notion that a woman shouldn't run again because a woman didn't win last time is something that you never hear said about men, and men have been losing elections in this country for hundreds of years.
So Politico published a tweet. It was right after Warren announced the Clinton redux they talked about and how a woman can avoid falling into the same trap she did. How similar are women's run for office that they should be gauging themselves against other female candidates?
Every campaign is different and every candidate is different. What's changed in the past several years is the way that women are campaigning. We call it being a 360-degree candidate. We saw in 2018 a record number of women elected to Congress. And in many cases, it's because those women brought the whole of their experience on the campaign trail. They showed who they are as human beings instead of trying to fit into an outdated template of what a candidate should look like. When we started doing this work 20 years ago, it was very much the women in the boxy suit, standing stiffly at a podium, sticking to the talking points. And in 2018, we saw women talking about very serious issues that were affecting their family. With all of the women on the campaign trail for 2020, we're seeing so much diversity in professional backgrounds and family backgrounds. There's really something for everybody. And that's why when you hear someone say, I would vote for a woman, just not that woman, it's a lot harder to hide bias behind that excuse when there's 6 totally different women to choose from in the running at this point.
So you mentioned this notion of family and how much someone's a family person, not a family person. How can women bring that up and show that they're a caring mother, whatever it may be, and also in a position that they will be able to run for office and hold office in a way where that's where their focus is?
So family is such an important issue. We studied the effect of family on candidates just a couple of years ago, and we've seen women talk about family in very honest, open terms, not just motherhood, but also siblings and caring for aging parents. And what's really important to remember is that voters in general tend to believe that women are more in touch with their lives. And talking about family as a way for women to connect with voters and show that they're tuned into kitchen table issues. However, it's certainly not a cakewalk when it comes to women candidates talking about family. We know that voters are very concerned about how mothers of young children are going to balance motherhood and doing the job, for example, and they don't have those same concerns about men. And in our focus groups, voters even admitted that that was a double standard and then still went on to participate in that double standard. And on the other side of the coin, voters worry that for single women that don't have children, they may not be in touch with their lives and may not understand. So it's very important for candidates to be authentic and talk about their lives in a way that connects with voters in a way that works for them.
So I want to go back and talk about likability and how there's a double standard with female candidates and male candidates here, specifically with women running in this election for 2020. How do they handle likability, remain likable, but also hardline on the topics they believe in?
Likability is so important. And we know that for any candidate, likability is important, man or woman. We've all heard the same question for seems like forever now. Who would you rather have a beer with? The difference is that for women candidates, likability is crucial because we know from our research that even if voters believe a woman is qualified, they won't vote for her if they don't like her. However, they will vote for a man if they believe that he's qualified, if they don't like him. And likability is very subjective and it's very difficult to pin down. So when you look at advice on likability, it often looks like walking a tightrope. It's things like use humor, but not too much humor, present well, but don't dress too nice, take credit, but also share credit. And in one of our focus groups, when asked for advice for women on how to present themselves to be likable, one person in the focus group said that the women should, quote, look impeccable. And that's just simply a much higher standard when you look at male candidates that women candidates are facing.
So there are very specific instances here. So the New York Times published an article a week and a half after Amy Klobuchar announced her campaign, how Klobuchar treats her staff. Gillibrand was destroyed for eating chicken with a fork and a knife. Talk to me about these specific instances and how, because we have seen the same thing. John Kerry was also criticized for using the wrong cheese on his Philly cheesesteak. So where is it that women are getting over criticized in instances men wouldn't necessarily be?
Well, it's certainly important to note that anyone running for president should be under a lot of scrutiny. They should be defending their record and they should have to defend their views on policy and their background. That is expected and should absolutely happen. The difference is when women are held to a higher standard. And for Senator Klobuchar, for example, that really points out a stereotype that is so entrenched on how women are supposed to act. We don't see those same types of questions when you hear or see comments about Senator Sanders being, quote, adorably cranky. I have a feeling that if a woman were cranky, people wouldn't think it was adorable and they'd probably have another word for it. And as far as Senator Gillibrand using the fork and knife, that had a very different implication. We have something that we talk about called the ethical pedestal, because women are believed to inherently be more moral and more honest and trustworthy, because partially during the suffrage movement, women argued that they should be allowed to vote to help clean out politics at the ballot box. And this is now sort of coming back around. And so although that was simply a campaign gaffe, you mentioned John Kerry made a similar gaffe, it's a lot easier for men to laugh those gaffes off. But the underlying commentary from some when Senator Gillibrand simply used the wrong cutlery to eat her food was that she was hiding something and she couldn't be trusted. And those are the types of undertones and commentary that women face all the time on the campaign trail.
So can a woman beat Trump? I mean, is this a realistic fear that they were talking about in this AP article?
I don't have the answer to what's going to happen. I don't have a crystal ball for the 2020 election. What's important to note is that we should not simply disqualify an entire category of people based on their gender. It seems like people do that all the time. Oh, we gave a woman a chance the last time. Guess we shouldn't do it this time. And like I said, nobody says that about men. We also know from our research that when women lose elections, voters don't hold it against them. It's possible for women to lose elections and relaunch themselves. And one reason that we looked at that is because for so many years, it seems like for men, losing an election is a prerequisite to a successful career in politics. And women were sometimes blamed and shamed for losing. Now we know that voters don't hold that against women, and it's possible for them to relaunch after a campaign loss.
So talk to me a little bit about the idea of change. If that's something voters are looking for, and we haven't had a female president before, does a woman represent that change people might be looking for?
In our 2017 study called Opportunity Knocks, which was right before the 2018 cycle, we found that voters were fed up with the status quo. Voters on both sides of the aisle were looking for change and were more likely to vote for a woman if they thought women served differently in office. And the interesting thing is we saw that play out in real time in 2018 when a record number of women were elected to office. However, most of them were elected to deliberative positions, and it's important to keep in mind those additional barriers when women seek executive office.
So do you think that it is more important so some women feel that Trump is not pushing for women's rights enough? Is it more important to have someone in office who cares about women's rights, may it or may not it be a woman, or is it to have an actual female candidate holding the office of president?
Well, I mean, that's a little bit outside the purview of what we do here. Certainly, we are always hoping for a woman president because we hope to seek political parity. And when you look at Congress right now, we have a record number of women in Congress. We still have less than a third of Congress is women. We have a very low percentage of governors. A number of states still have never had a female governor. And certainly we've never had a female president. So there are a lot of hurdles that still need to be cleared in order to have true equity for women. And that's something that we will always be looking at, those numbers and how that will tend to, hopefully that gap will close.
So if it is a woman that goes up against Trump, what's your advice for her?
Well, gosh, first of all, to be aware of the barriers that any woman is going to face when seeking the highest executive office in the country. When you look at the way that resumes are scrutinized for women seeking executive office, Carly Fiorina is a great example from 2016. If she had been a man, her business record probably would have been taken for granted and she wouldn't have been questioned over her record and her ability to get results. So keeping that in mind, qualifications, reinforcing qualifications, and also we know that preparation is key. It seems like it's no accident that the four sitting senators who are women who are running for office right now all rolled out their campaigns early. They had big successful campaign events. They all had developed policy positions on their website because women pay a much higher price if they're viewed to be learning on the job, which in the case of campaigning means not looking prepared or stumbling on the campaign trail. So women really have to be completely prepared and ready to go. Men are often not held to that same standard.
Great. Amanda Hunter, thank you so much for joining us today here on Bold.
Thank you.